Hello, my name is Kristen Roseberry, a program consultant in the Office of Assessment and Accountability. Welcome to the Inclusion of Special Populations Training 703 KAR 5:070. This is Module 7 of 7 that make up this training series. This training must be completed prior to providing accommodations for any state-required assessments. Please ensure to review all 7 modules for the complete training. We will now discuss conditions for specific accommodations on state tests and the rules that govern what can and cannot be done when providing those accommodations as laid out by the Inclusion of Special Populations Regulation. Module 7 discusses calculator, oral native language support, bilingual or English dictionary, extended time, behavior modifications, and interpreters. Calculators are available on state tests in the online format, handheld calculator, or both forms, depending on the test being given. Regardless of the medium that the calculator is provided, whether in a handheld or online variety, the rules that govern their uses remain the same. To use a calculator, a student must have the need documented on their plan, which includes documentation of a disability's impact on mathematics, calculation, or reasoning. Have used the calculator in routine instruction throughout the year. The plan will clearly indicate if the student should receive an online calculator or a handheld calculator. If a student has a valid calculator accommodation, then that calculator is allowed on all sections, including non-calculator sections of the test. It should be noted that the calculator accommodation is a disability accommodation, not an EL accommodation. Oral native language support shall be based on a student's individual language needs as documented in the PSP. It is not limited to any specific time frame. May range from specific vocabulary to rendering entire assessments into the student's native language, includes directions and all parts of the test that the student needs translated. Flexibility of administration schedule is allowed to meet the needs of interpreters. Bilingual or English dictionaries are available on some state tests. They can be print or electronic. It should be noted that you need to read the testing literature for each state test on how the dictionary should be provided. Some may require a handheld dictionary. Some may require the use of an embedded dictionary in the testing platform, and others may require the use of an electronic version on a tablet or exterior device. Some state tests may not allow the accommodation. It is important to read all the test administration manuals for each test being administered to determine how to handle this accommodation. If allowed on the test you are administering, there are some specific guidelines that must be followed. Bilingual or English dictionary should only provide word-to-word translations without definitions. All additional capabilities must be turned off, including internet, translating whole phrases or sentences, etc. Now let's look at some ways to prevent allegations or best practices to engage in when providing oral native language support. Flexibility for test schedules is not permitted unless a student has an oral native language support marked on their PSP. If there's a shortage of interpreters, EL students may use a different test administration schedule as long as it occurs within the district established testing window. Paraphrasing and simplified language may be used for directions only and is not a supported accommodation for state assessments. The proctor may only paraphrase or simplify directions. Test content, questions, or answer choices may not be altered. Once time begins on a state assessment, nothing can be paraphrased. Note, this is not a change in policy. An accommodation is a support for the inclusion of special populations. Because paraphrasing can be used on test directions only for all populations, it is not a support for special populations and is therefore not an accommodation. Extended time is allowed on state assessments for those taking the general assessment. Extended time is not an alternate assessment accommodation because that is not a timed test. Extended time can be in the form of time and a half or double time based on a committee or team decision for that student based on data and observation. Regular time must be used appropriately in order to receive extended time. If for some reason a student does not use regular testing time appropriately, for example, they sleep for 55 minutes of the hour-long test, you may deny extended time to that student. Make sure you document everything in as much detail as you can muster and turn it into the building assessment coordinator so that they can properly document why the student was denied extended time. Students should be provided extended time based on the committee or team decision documented in guidelines the building assessment coordinator have laid out. Some schools keep the student in the same testing room while others relocate them to a library or a lounge. That is all a local decision, but follow building protocols for those students. Reinforcement and behavior modification strategies are allowed on state tests. This can include testing a student with behavior issues in a one-to-one environment to prevent disruption for other students. This is a local decision. You can use positive behavioral interventions supports as indicated in a student's behavior intervention plan and/or IEP as decided by the ARC 504 based on data. Can use verbal, tangible, or tactile reinforcements for being on task. Can be tested in a separate location outside the regular classroom. Cannot influence, impact, or disturb other students. Can use technology to focus attention or reduce stress. Use of technology for these students does not mean that they can use the text reader or an audio CD. It means if a student is given computer time as a reward for on-task behavior, then the student will still get that after testing is complete for the day. Alternate assessment students can have their breaks during the assessment since the alternate assessment is not a timed assessment. Reinforcement behavior modifications are a disability accommodation, not an EL accommodation. Interpreters for a student who is deaf or hard of hearing. The student must have a verified disability in the area of hearing and use sign language as the normal mode of communication. The interpreter shall not indicate correct answers or define words, provide content, teach vocabulary, or concepts. Any person not working in a certified position who is providing assistance for a student shall read and sign a non-disclosure agreement provided by the department. Check for understanding number 7. If a student qualifies for a calculator accommodation, the student may use the calculator on any test, including the non-calculator portions of the exam, true or false. The answer is true. If a student qualifies for a calculator accommodation, they are permitted to use a calculator on any test, whether that test allows the use of a calculator or not. Paraphrasing, number 2, paraphrasing and simplified language are not permissible accommodations for the content portions of state assessments, true or false. The answer is true. Paraphrasing and simplified language are not accommodations for special populations for state assessments. They can be used for all students for the directions only. Number 3, which of the following is not true about the usage of bilingual dictionaries? A, they must be printed. B, they should only provide word-to-word translations without definitions. C, they may be electronic. D, internet or any additional capabilities must be turned off. The answer is A. This is a tricky question because bilingual dictionaries may be printed copies. However, they do not have to be. Electronic copies are allowed as well. Number 4, if a student is denied extended time on a state test, the test administrator should do the following. A, take thorough notes on why the decision was made. B, contact the building assessment coordinator and inform them of why the decision was made and provide them with the notes. C, both A and B. D, none of the above. The answer is C. If a student is denied extended time on a state test, the test administrator should take thorough notes on why that decision was made and provide those notes and notification as soon as possible to the building assessment coordinator for proper documentation. Number 5, a student has behavior modifications on their IEP and routinely disrupts normal classroom instruction. What needs to be done to test this student one-to-one? A, contact KDE for prior approval. B, contact USED for prior approval. C, choose not to test the student. D, follow district procedures. KDE will leave this decision to local school systems. The answer is D. This is a local decision that does not require the involvement of KDE or USED. Simply follow district procedures. If you are unsure what those procedures are, contact your building assessment coordinator or district assessment coordinator. This concludes the 7 modules of the inclusion of special populations training. If you have any questions about anything we discussed, please feel free to contact our office by emailing dacinfo@education.ky.gov or by calling 502-564-4394.